Thank you very much, Eduardo, for that introduction. I'm very grateful. The warmth of the welcome that we've had since we arrived in Brazil is really quite remarkable. And I'd like to thank you all for it. I'd also like to thank the university particularly for making available the facilities and so generously supporting the holding of this conference. It falls to me, as the co-chair, along with Eduardo, to really put this conference in the context of the program of conferences that we've held since 2002, when we had the first one of these in Cape Town. It was particularly important to us to have one here alongside Rio +20 because this series of conferences commenced in Cape Town alongside the World Summit on Sustainable Development in 2002. And there are a number of people here today who were there in Cape Town in 2002. Eugenio Eunice is here, will be speaking very shortly. Heidi Kaiser will be speaking, I think, tomorrow. And Jeffrey Littman, who will be speaking here later today. If I've forgotten anyone, I apologise. It is very interesting that there are a number of people who've stuck with us through the 10 years. What I would thank you. We've held now 6 of these, in Cape Town in 2002, then in Caroline 2008, Belize, close to Brazil, then in Oman, Alberta in Canada, and also Canada this year. We're also hosting another conference alongside this in South Africa House in London on Thursday. They've all been very different. We've co-chaired them, but each of the conferences has really taken on a specific national and local flavour. They've all been run by a partner organisation, and they've all left different legacies. There isn't time now, perhaps, to go through the legacies, but in Belize it had a big impact on the way tourism has been run. That's happening in Alberta too. I'll come back and talk about Oman shortly. In Kerala, we've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of activity around particularly the poverty reduction agenda from the state government. And it'll be interesting for me to see what comes from Sao Paulo. We are 10 years on now from Cape Town. It will be interesting to see what comes from being alongside Rio in a few years' time. What we really want to do is to look at the progress which we've made in sustainable development internationally in this conference. The focus is very much looking at what's been achieved, particularly since Rio, but also since Cape Town in 2002. We want to take a very hard look at that progress. I'm notorious for believing that the glass is way less than half full, but we do want to take an objective look today and also in London on Thursday at how much progress has been made. I think the reality is, and it'll be interesting to see what the conclusion is at the end of the conference, but I think the reality is that we're not making progress fast enough. We really need to speed up if we have any chance at all of balancing the demands of people for development and the need to preserve our environment, our cultural, social and economic environment for the future. I think it's a big challenge, and so far we're not making enough progress. 2012 is a tough year. In Europe we've got austerity which is fighting hard. It's very hard from here to imagine how difficult things currently are in Europe. But believe me, they're difficult. Tourism is only on the margins of the agenda of Rio. It's being mentioned, but it's not there in any very significant way. And indeed, a lot of people who are involved in tourism internationally will not be in Rio. Some of the people in the room here today, I know will be going to Rio tomorrow or the day after. The political situation in the Eurozone is very difficult too. The Arab Spring continues. We're in a period of very rapid change, and the constraints to growth are becoming more apparent, I think, to people each year. We're beginning to realise that we are bumping up against the limits of growth. People are also in that context reluctant to travel, and it's very noticeable that in the programme, we've got a number of video presentations, particularly from the people who are involved in the carbon session later on in the programme. They've been very reluctant to travel, so we have a number of video presentations from them. It's also very obvious, though, that the recession is not global. In terms of the BRIC countries, economic growth continues apace. I think in common with a lot of people who enjoyed very much the city tour that we were given yesterday. A remarkable series of visits. We visited the public market and we saw the vibrancy of the food economy here in Rio, in Sao Paulo. A very attractive tourist experience. We went to the Afro-Brazil Museum, which again was, I think, really a memorable experience for all of us. But for me too, the experience coming back on the coach through your wealthier shopping streets was a salutary reminder that Europe is in decline, that the British economies are growing, we better adjust to that very quickly. So for me it's really important to be for the first time bringing the Responsible Tourism Conference to Brazil. If I could just say something about the International Centre, it's really a network of responsible tourism practitioners. It's a coalition of willing to use a phrase which has been used in unpleasant ways, but I think around responsible tourism it is basically a group of people who come together with a shared agenda, a shared commitment to the principles of the Cape Town Declaration, and a shared desire to make a change. It's composed of individuals and centres all around the world, people in the industry, media, academics, travellers, people all of whom want to make a difference. They're all working in different ways, and it's important to recognise that there are lots of different ways in which you can contribute to making tourism more sustainable. I'd like to say a really deep thank you to the University of Sao Paulo, really for rescuing RTD6. We struggled very hard to find sponsors. We struggled hard to organise it in Rio. I'm delighted in the context of the parallels with Cape Town and the warmth of the welcome that we've had here in Sao Paulo, that is taking place in Sao Paulo. But I really am grateful to everyone who stepped in to provide this opportunity to hold the conference alongside Rio +20. Thank you to the university for providing a venue, for providing the translation services, which I think we probably all agree, those of us who've been listening, are exceptionally good. I'm really very grateful to the translators for that. Too often we forget how important a role the translators play in these kinds of events. We have two very special translators back in the room with us today. And also to the University for videoing the presentations. That means that the conference will reach well beyond this lecture theatre and this audience, and the legacy is as important as what happens here in the room. If you are tweeting, we'd be grateful if you'd use the hashtag RTD6. There's already quite a lot of traffic out there using that, and we'd be grateful for your feedback and contributions to the debate which will be taking place online throughout this week. The people who've organised the event have put in an enormous amount of work to pull it off. And it's a really big thank you from Javier and I to this group of people. They've really worked a lot of hours to pull this together. And for all the success of this conference, we thank them for all the faults of their hours. They are not the faults of our organisers. These people have done a tremendous job in pulling the conference together for us. I'd also like to thank Javier for suggesting the University of Sao Paulo in the first place and for working with them. I'd like to thank the co-chair, Eduardo. I'd like to thank the City of Sao Paulo for the city tour yesterday and for the warmth of the welcome that we've had here. But most of all, I'd like to thank you, the delegates and speakers, for making this possible. There'd be no point in holding these conferences if people didn't want to come along. I won't embarrass the person who said this to me, but they'll remember that they said it. As I went out just now to bring people in, one of the delegates, who's come actually a very long way to be here, said to me, well, I don't know what the conference is going to be like, but it's been worth it for the last 4 hours. And I think that's a testament to the quality of the people who are here in the room today and to the conversations which are already beginning to occur around the conference. I hope that the conference does meet the expectations of that particular person, but certainly the conversations which are occurring around the conference are, in my view, as important as those which happen in the conference room. We have a very diverse group of speakers and delegates for this conference. I'm not going to embarrass everybody, but I know it is important to our hosts that there are people here from Abu Dhabi. Could the people from Abu Dhabi just raise their hands? From, who shall I embarrass next? From Iran. Thank you very much. And also from Oman. Thank you. So it's really interesting. We've got 21 different countries here. I'm sure I probably missed one or two, but it's a very international audience. Responsible tourism is fundamentally about making better places for people to live in, better places for people to visit. It's about saying, can we use tourism to make Brazil a better place to live in? It's a market opportunity for the industry. It's a market opportunity for local communities. We've seen some wonderful local crafts for sale both in the market and at the museum yesterday. But it's also a fundamental approach to managing tourism and destinations. And it's about applying really global thinking, but it's about the local action. It's the action that matters. And over the last 20 years, there's been far too much emphasis on trying to draw up lists and too little emphasis on actually doing things. That for me is the difference. The aspiration of responsible tourism is to respond, do what we can to make tourism contribute to making better places for people to live in. It's about recognising diversity, it's about thinking globally and acting locally. Fundamentally, it's about taking responsibility and doing the right thing. And I know that we've got some of the people here who are doing most around the world to achieve those objectives. For me, it's about legacy. There won't be a declaration from this conference, but there will be a special edition of Progress in Responsible Tourism. There will be a legacy website. World Travel Market is coming to Brazil from April next year, and Wanda is involved in organising that. And it will, from day one, be including the World Travel Market World Responsible Tourism Day. 4 different panels on economic, social and environmental responsibility. I'm very excited by that. I'm very excited that an organisation like REED has put that into the programme from day one. It's a very influential event in London, and I'm sure that the one in Brazil will develop in the same way and become very influential in the region and around the world. There will also, we hope, be an academic symposium in April next year linked to the WTO and WRTD. We'll be organising that with the University of Sao Paulo and with that same group of people with whom we organise this conference. And that will result in a special issue of Progress in Responsible Tourism in June next year. The presentations from this conference will all go up on the RT Forum website. We'll make sure that that web address gets emailed to all of you immediately after the conference. And finally, from me, an apology. I unfortunately need to leave on Tuesday night. That's because I need to be in London to share a sister event at South Africa House, which Heike Kaiser and Xavier will both be at as well. Really looking at the legacy of 10 years on from Cape Town. So I apologise for not being with you on Wednesday, but I do need to leave in time to be sure that I'm there. Xavier will be here on Wednesday. He's going to take a gamble on his flight getting into London on time on Thursday morning. We'll be doing both gambles, so I'm sorry that I won't be with you. But finally, let me say thank you very much for everyone who's made this possible and to you for being here. Thank you very much.